An extract from the book Such Were the Conditions, the Kahnplay incident by Ronald Quist. Ian and I were initially placed in the same cell. We complied with their instructions without protest or emotional expression. We were both unable to process what was happening to us. Our cell was just a large hole in the ground, set within a mud-thatched roof building. My question was answered. I had wondered how prisoners were securely held against their will within a mud hut. The dungeon was about 8 feet square and about 7 feet deep, with a dried mud floor and walls. It was too dark to tell how the ceilings were held up. I guess that mud was used to cover a mesh of dried palm branches. At 6 feet 2 inches, I still had quite a few inches of clearance. There were no windows, and the only exit was a hole near the top of the cell that was about 15 inches wide and 24 inches high. The passage opened into another dark, windowless room, which served as a sort of foyer for our prison building. It was a real struggle for us, young as we were, to get in and out of the cell. The soldiers were brutal. One practice was that as you attempted to crawl out of the cell, a soldier would stand over you and slap the sides of your head with both hands as you emerged out through the hole in the wall. Our exits out of our cells were similar to the way a rat might emerge from a hole in the skirting boards. It was very distressing to listen to the screams of other prisoners in adjoining cells. Some cells were merely cages large enough for a man to crouch in. It would have been a cruel man who might keep a goat in one of those cages. The worst screams came from prisoners who had handcuffs placed on their wrists so tight that all blood circulation ceased. We saw some prisoners with amputated wrists. I presume this was a consequence of the handcuff torture treatment. The cells were pitch black. Even as you waved your hand inches in front of your face, there was no sensation of a shadowy movement. Once inside the cell, it was impossible to tell what time of day or night it was, but I imagined it was about midnight on our first night when I heard a commotion outside our cell. "Come out, come out," the guard shouted. I was sure this was the end. We had heard too many stories about prisoners held at the Barclay Training Center in Monrovia, having their throats slit at night. Someone had smoked too much strong ganja or drank too much moonshine and wanted to have some fun with those foreign mercenaries. The guard spoke to us very sternly. "We have received word that both of you are black belt karate experts, so we are placing you in separate cells for our safety and security. If we hear any speaking between your cells or you make any sudden moves, we have orders to finish you off." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This whole crazy episode was becoming more insane by the hour. Looking back now, I guess that given that we were both over 6 feet tall and given how short most of the men in the village were, we may have appeared physically intimidating. But to call Ian a fighter or a martial arts expert was plainly ridiculous. A couple of years later, when I first heard Michael Jackson say, "Paul, I'm a lover, not a fighter," in his duet with Paul McCartney, "The Girl Is Mine," I immediately thought of Ian. For my part, I just couldn't reconcile being a karate expert with my skinny self-image. I opted to go to the different cell indicated, except for the large amount of human excrement, some of it quite fresh. It was not much different from the cell I had shared with Ian. Something I learned that night is that disgusting smells only last until your nasal passages are saturated. After about an hour, I could not smell anything at all. For about 2 weeks after we were released, my brother Michael would claim that he could still smell feces oozing out of my pores. But I paid a price for the smell only for the first hour or so. The next day, a Sunday, they brought us out of our cells in the afternoon. From the canes placed against the empty 55-gallon metal oil drum positioned in the center of a small courtyard, it was quite clear we were going to be given lashes. Ian spoke under his breath to me. Ron, I know you see yourself as a tough guy, and you identify with the John Wayne type of cowboy character. But believe me, those John Wayne antics don't work with these no-cos folk. Ian was using commonly used Liberian slang for army regulars derived from NCOs, non-commissioned officers. He saw me look back at him with some skepticism. He went on, "Look here, these country folk believe there is a devil inside of you, and they are literally beating the devil out of you. If you stay quiet and don't start hollering at the top of your lungs, they will keep on lashing you until the devil is released."